Just so you know, the audio isn't working on your call out to me. It's just not working. I can't hear shit.
Okay. No, I just had it muted.
Ah.
But what I would say, now that I have the mic going, is that every evolutionist claim of evolution amounts to two things. Generally, they are assumptions or speculations conjectured to be a fact, which is said to be evidence of evolution, or they're evidence of something, but not evidence of evolution, because they don't have any power to move the organism towards something.
Well, could I put up on your the interviews that you cited as evidence against evolution from that creationist quote unquote documentary? So I looked into one of the blokes who was interviewed, and he has a paper amongst quite a few patterns of mammalian evolution across the Cretaceous to Tertiary boundary, and it's actually reflecting evolution. And he was the one that you cited as an example against evolution in this little interview from that guy who has no credentials in biology.
Let me correct you about that. I didn't cite him. That's misinformation.
Well, you didn't cite him, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but
so you said I did, I did.
Yeah, no, but he's the one who... Hold on. He's the one who...
I cited a documentary by Dr.
Yeah, but he's interviewed in that documentary.
And what's important to know, though, is it doesn't matter to me one bit what papers that particular...
But he's the one who's done the research.
Let me finish.
You can't quote mine like that.
It doesn't matter to me what papers in the journals this particular scientist may have that he says provide arguments or evidence for evolution. What I pointed out is the clear admissions by the scientists who were interviewed on camera that modern taxa of birds coexisted with dinosaurs in the Cretaceous.
None of his
papers. That's all I'm interested in. Okay.
Yeah, but none of his.
Hold on.
Yes. Okay.
Hold on.
No, I'm giving you.
This is why I always
admission.
Out of my hangover.
No. Hold on. I'm almost giving you.
Hold on. I'm going to mute. Okay. Hold on a second. Hold on, please. This is why I end up always having to kick you out of my hangouts, because you never let somebody talk. You talk endlessly over people. Okay. Let me finish what I'm saying, and then you can speak on the mic. Okay. You've got to learn to control your.
Yeah, go on. Okay? Just talk.
I know that you don't like it. The creationists put arguments forth.
You don't have any arguments, though. That's the thing.
You have to learn to control. If you want to engage creationists, you have to learn to control yourself.
He's got papers suggesting.
What I was saying. It doesn't matter one iota if he believes evolution or writes billions.
He doesn't believe it. He's got a research paper.
What does matter is that evolutionists have been telling us for over a century that modern birds did not coexist with dinosaurs. And they've still got papers in the journals that say so, as you should know, that modern birds did not come into existence until millions of years after dinosaurs, large thoroughbred dinosaurs, went extinct. But now, scientific evidence refutes that. And so this scientist gets on camera and says that these modern taxa of birds coexisted with dinosaurs in the Cretaceous, then that's all I'm interested in.
No,
See,
okay,
all
so
I'm
Evan,
I'm not done. I'm not done.
No, it's that your point has been made.
Bye.
Bye. No.
If you won't stop talking over me, you're not welcome here. Okay. See, all I was interested in showing is that the evidence is clear, and that there are many scientists who acknowledge it, that the claim that's been given to us for over a century that modern taxa of birds did not coexist with dinosaurs and did not exist for millions of years is false, even from the mouth of those scientists who claim evolution is true. That's all I wanted to point out. Because it was put to me that evolution, that the claim of evolution is true. That modern birds did not coexist with dinosaurs, and that's what we've all been spoon-fed on this planet for over 100 years. And evolutionists have been still spoon-feeding this to us, and they're still doing so. So it's damning evidence to have a dozen scientists who are prominent evolutionists and specialists at museums of natural history who are science paper writers who are evolutionists and believe evolution lock, stock, and barrel to get on camera and admit that modern taxa of birds coexisted with dinosaurs. Because it proves that the claim you've been told for 150 years is a lie. when evolutionists have been telling us all this time and are still telling us this garbage today that modern birds did not coexist with dinosaurs. It's a lie, and the documentary proves it. It gets numerous scientists, who are evolutionists themselves, to admit that on camera. And so, what the physical evidence is one thing, and what comes out of the mouth of the evolutionist to the world and on TV is another thing. It's a pack of lies. You see? The physical evidence is birds coexisted with dinosaurs. That comes out of their mouth on Discovery Channel is modern birds didn't exist for millions of years until millions of years after dinosaurs went extinct. That's the lie. The physical evidence is the fossils found in the dinosaur digs. That's the truth. What comes out of the mouth of the evolutionists on television is a lie. What they write in their papers, been writing in the papers about this for decades, is a lie. They've been telling us all this time modern birds didn't coexist with dinosaurs. They didn't evolve until millions of years later, and they didn't diversify until except over a period of 6.5 million years. That's a lie, because the fossil evidence proves it wrong. Sandpipers, cormorants, owls, avocets, penguins, several other flamingos. Flamingos, for crying out loud. Can you imagine that? T-Rex walking around and amongst a bunch of flamingos. How's that happen? Can you see that? There's a herd of flamingos waiting in some shallow water over here, and there goes T-Rex splashing around, walking by about 75 feet away. Isn't that something? Because, the evolutionists have been telling us for 120-something, 30, 40-something years that flamingos didn't exist until millions of years after T-Rex died out. But we know that's not true. So somebody's been lying to us for 150 years. Well, of course, the evolutionists have. And this is true of every claim of evolution. The whole freaking theory is nothing but packages of lies. See, it's based on their idea that evolution proceeded in this way, and these creatures came from those creatures, and these creatures came from those creatures, and these creatures came from those creatures, and that's their packaged idea in their head. That's what's in their head. What's the physical evidence say? No, because cormorants, sandpipers, owls, avocets, albatross, parrots, penguins, these flamingos, these birds lived with T-Rex. And guess what that fits? The biblical account. Because the Bible says God made all those creatures in a week. And they lived together all throughout the history of man until the dinosaurs went extinct. And the cormorants and the avocets and the owls and the parrots and the penguins and the albatross, all these creatures continued to flourish. But the T-Rex went out, and the Triceratops, and the theropod dinosaurs, and the sauropod dinosaurs, and many other types of dinosaurs. They went extinct, but the birds kept on living. They're living fossils. So what's wrong with this picture? Well, we've been lied to. And that's true of every claim of evolution theory. Every one of them is a lie. Now, MMArtist, I set this hang up, I wanted to talk to you, but you proved yourself, before you had even been in this room 1 minute, you proved that you were not willing to talk to anybody without talking over them endlessly. You're welcome to come back in on one condition, if you're still listening, and talk. That is, that you be patient a little, learn to control your emotions. I know you can't stand it. That a creationist has an argument to make and they have evidence to provide. You don't want the world to hear it coming out of the mouth of the creationist, so you want to talk over them. You only want yourself heard. If you can control yourself, you're welcome to come back in. And I'll give you the mic, as I tried and did before in the last hangout that I had that you were in. I let you talk. It's just you didn't want to let me talk. But I started this hangout for one reason. You've been trolling me in posts on unrelated videos. excuse me, I was in a hangout earlier talking about Christianity and the gospel of Jesus Christ with some friends. And you trolled me there. You posted a lie, misrepresented what I said in a post on that video. What does that video have anything to do with creation or evolution? So you're trolling me. And so you're very adamant about evolution. So I started this hangout for one reason, was to call your bluff. I want to challenge you to a structured debate, 90 minutes long, with a moderator on the subject of evolution or creation. Now, I'm 90% sure that your response will be the same thing that I got from Thunderfoot, DPR Jones, Aaron Raw, Don Exodus 2, and a half a dozen other popular atheists with tens of thousands of subscribers. It's not worth my time, or he's not worth my time. But yet you're willing to come into my hangouts and you want to debate evolution, even troll me on videos completely unrelated to evolution and post false information saying that I cited something to somebody that I did not. Then I got you to admit in this hangout, no, you didn't cite him. Right, because you said in that post on that unrelated video that I did, and I told you I didn't. In this hangout, you admitted that I did not. I cited the documentary, not that particular man. Now, he might be in that documentary, but I didn't cite him. I cited the whole documentary. But if you're so dead sure evolution is true, instead of talking over me constantly in my hangouts, why don't you accept the challenge to debate me in a structured debate for 90 minutes with a moderator? We'll have a formal structured debate. 5-minute opening, 7-minute opening statements, or 8-minute opening statements. And back and forth 5 minutes for 25 minutes, for 20 minutes, and then a 20-minute question and answer session back and forth. I ask you questions, you answer. You ask me questions, I answer, and then we're back to 5 minutes apiece arguments for another 20 minutes or something. And then we have a closing statement for 7 or 8 minutes, and then we have an open discussion questions answer session from the public for about 20 minutes after that. A 90-minute debate, structured, with a moderator. What do you say? Because this trolling me to unrelated videos is just, you're offending people. They don't want that kind of thing posted on their videos where a bunch of Christians are hanging out talking about the gospel message and how work salvation is false, and faith alone in Jesus Christ alone is the reason for our salvation and whatnot. And that's not. It's completely unrelated to evolution theory or creation, and they don't want posts like that, in discussions like that on their video. So you want to troll me, you want to talk over me endlessly in my hangouts. You're really very adamant, fired up young man. I'd be happy to debate you. But since you're not able to debate with me in my own hangouts like a gentleman and not talk over me endlessly, even when I, as I proved in my last hangout that you were in, was willing to give you the microphone for 2 minutes, 3 minutes at a time, and I did it repeatedly, over and over. But when you get very upset, you start talking over me and you refuse to stop. I can't speak. So how about it? It looks like it'll be either that or nothing, because you can't you simply don't seem to be able to control your emotions in a hangout with a creationist. In a structured debate, it's not a problem because you've got X minutes to speak and then that's it. Moderator shuts you off. Because the moderator would be the only one with the mute button in the room. They would be the one who started the hangout. You and I would be guests. And they can mute anybody they want to. Or choose to not present somebody. They can unpresent you so you can't even speak at all. All you can do is listen. And they could do that to both of us while the other is talking. And there won't be you talking over me endlessly. See? Somehow I doubt you'll take that challenge, though. Most evolutionists won't. I mean, if the most popular atheists on YouTube like Aaron Raw and DPR Jones and Thunderfoot and his gang, that kind of a gang. If they won't take up the challenge to structure and to engage in a structured debate with a creationist, why am I to believe you would? Because about 97% of all the people I've ever challenged to a structured debate have said no. And almost every one of them has given the exact same answer as to why they won't. And I'll quote them. He's not worth my time. Some of those guys thought I was worth enough of their time to spend 2.5, 3.5, 4 hours clicking and dragging and recording and stuff to make 30-minute videos or hour-long video about me, like Thunderfoot. He's done that. He's made videos about me more than once. You know, you gotta get your media, you gotta record on the camera, you gotta edit and stuff and paste. And, you know, there's a little bit of work there. Took him, you know, I'd say an hour or 3 of his life, but somehow a 90-minute debate is not worth his time. So I don't know if you're any different, but that's my challenge. I mean, put up or shut up. That's what I have to say. Hey, Jim. I have somebody in here named Jim.
Hello, how are you tonight?
I'm doing all right, Jim, I guess. How about yourself?
Oh, good. Getting a chance to listen to you. Of course, being a little bit new to Google Plus here and the great debate in itself. It seems that you're a high authority of your particular point of view, and you seem to defend yourself quite well. And to be able to listen in on debates is my key focus here. I'm hoping that maybe even someone like Steve McRae would come in and talk to you.
Well, Steve was in one of my hangouts just a couple of days ago. Yeah, for about, I don't know, 30 minutes or 45 minutes, something like that. He couldn't stay very long. He had something he had to do.
Did he treat you respectfully?
Yeah, Steve was. You know, the funny thing is, when Steve is in a hangout run by himself and there's 1 or 2 creationists, he gets kind of, you know, on fire and tends to talk over people endlessly too. But when he was in my hangout, he seemed to behave himself very well.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
I like him. I just wish he'd come to the truth. You know, I want him to see the truth, you know. And as I do for all of them, because, hey, I'm a Christian and I want people to understand that Jesus Christ is truth. He's the Lord. And that he's full of love. And he wants to save us from our sins. You know, he doesn't have any animosity towards us. He wants to love us and give us paradise. And paradise can only be found in him. And he alone holds it in his hand. And he's our creator. And we were indeed created. I want people to understand that. You know, it requires kicking off your ego and your pride, getting rid of that so you can humble yourself to God. And some people just don't want to do that. They don't want to.
It's a sensitive subject.
What's that?
It's a sensitive subject for a lot of people, yeah.
It is, because it boils down to whether or not you're guilty before a holy God, and that's offensive to some people. I've said it many times. The cross of Jesus Christ is the most offensive thing in this world, because it requires somebody to recognize they're the one that deserves to be nailed to it, and not Jesus Christ. That's a very offensive message to somebody who's very much opposed to feeling that way in their heart. Hey, I'm Resolve. Good to see you. How are you? So anyway, you know, I mean, I opened this hangout for the purpose. I didn't mean to, I didn't know I was expected I was going to have to kick him so quickly, but he wasn't in here 5 minutes and already he would not stop talking over me. I just wanted, you know, 15 more seconds on the mic, and then I was going to give it to him, but he wouldn't let me have it. So I just kicked him out. You know, if somebody can have a discussion and control themselves a little bit, they're welcome to debate anything they want to. I debate atheists and evolutionists alike. I debate everything, you know, cosmology, astronomy, biology, you know, philosophy, the religion, history. I debate anything. I love all that kind of stuff. But you can't have a discussion like that if somebody won't stop talking over you endlessly. How can you do that?
You can listen better. Just take time to listen better. You know, sometimes it's best not to engage in when somebody's energy's in maybe an excited state, it might be best just to let them go for a little bit. You could debate many more days, many more times other than this, and you can build upon it. It's not necessary to have, I would put that, that little button there that mutes. I'd put a safety lock on that if I was you, just to feel that he didn't have to jump into the censorship world of,
Well, I don't want to be that way. I really don't. But how can you? But they get so voracious that every time you try to say something, when it's your turn to speak, you let them have the mic for a minute and a half, 2.5 minutes, and then you start to say something, and already, 19 words come out of your mouth, and blah, 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 they're talking over you, and it's like, wait, let me finish what I'm saying. No, blah, 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 blah. I mean,
what about Joe Sansi? Can you send him an invite? He's a very polite young man.
Well, I've invited everybody in my circles, so
I can't believe nobody wants to come in and debate you right now. It's interesting.
Well, it's been a lot less than in the past. While we're waiting to see if anybody would like to come in and discuss, I'll show you something. It's an article. It's several years old. Well, actually, this is from 2015, but I think this took place several years ago. 2011, yeah. University of Kentucky pays $100,000 to settle Gaskell discrimination suit. What this was about is Martin Gaskell was considered for the job of astronomy professor at the University of Kentucky. Emails between the administrators acknowledged that he was a perfect candidate for the job. His outreach program was excellent. They thought this was the guy for the job. They were all excited. Then one of them discovers the guy's a creationist, and he emails the other administrator, I don't know, we should be careful about this guy. He's a creationist. Maybe we have to too soon. Maybe we should not let this guy get the job. They didn't give him the job. He found out about the emails, subpoenaed the server, got the emails off of him, sued him, and won. So I just pointed that out to show that you hear the evolutionists all the time talking about no creationist publishes a paper in the science journals because they're whack-nuts. They don't do real science. No, that's not it. It's because the secular camp that rules the scientific journals won't let them publish. That's why. They won't even let them have a job if they can help it.
Is that excluding peer review, or is that including?
Oh, that includes university professorships, papers published in science journals. Hey, even if a scientist, hey guys, good to see you, Jungle, and well, somebody popped in and left. Even if a scientist publishes evidence that argues against anything believed to be an important part of any part of the evolution theory, even if it's astronomy or biological, they'll throw him under the bus too. Just like they did with, I can't remember the name of the professor of university astronomer who published findings on what I call parent and daughter galaxies, showing that the redshift was out of whack, if we're to believe redshift is the end-all for knowing how old something is in outer space. And he said, no, I refuse. They rejected his paper. And he said, wait, this data's all been backed up. My students went over my data, poured over it with calculators. Everything has been re-verified and verified. It's accurate. And they said, no, unacceptable. The journal editor wrote in the corner of the paper, this is unacceptable, and returned it. And when he protested, they took his telescope time away from him to punish him. When he protested that, they fired him. And he was an evolutionist. He believes in cosmic evolution. He believes the Big Bang Theory. He just published data that said, wait, we got to re-examine. This can't be right. And they said, somebody provided evidence that our cherished idea, may not be exactly true. We have to rethink the whole model. Oh, no, we can't have anybody question the theory. It's got to be true. The Big Bang was purely naturalistic, and it happened, and that's a fact, and it was billions of years ago. Shut that guy up real quick. That's the way that works. And the examples of this are all over the place. There's lots of them. Anyway.
I wanted to ask you a question because I'm interested about Seventh-day Advents. Do you have an opinion on that?
I don't know much about them, really. I really don't. I wish I did. I know one Seventh-day Adventist preacher that happens to be, I've watched him about 5 or 6 of his videos, anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour and long or more. And every time he says nothing but the gospel truth. I've seen him say nothing unbiblical. Now, I'm not speaking for the Seventh-day Adventist churches, and I'm not in support of them when I say that. I'm just saying this guy tells the truth as far as I can tell. So I don't know what the Seventh-day Adventists believe. I've heard negative things about them, that they had false prophets, and I don't know. But all I can tell you is this one guy that I know of, every time I've watched one of his videos, he's telling it straight out of the Bible. I can't remember the name of his channel, but his name is Doug something. I'm sorry?
Was his name Justin?
No, Doug something or other.
Oh, okay.
He's a pastor at a very large church, I think, and he's really good. And he's also really good at supporting creation. He does a good job of giving sermons about creation in his church as well. And I've never seen him tell anything but the gospel truth. It's always been completely biblical, right out of the Bible. He shows you the passage and explains clearly what it's saying. And but now, as for the church, Seventh-day Adventists, I don't support them, and I don't reject them either. I don't know enough to do so.
Do you think diet is an environmental impact?
Diet has
If you have you ever argued or debated with somebody that's tossed that out there as far as evolution and creation goes, where the evolutionist will add in as his part of his argument that the actual diet of an animal?
Now, I've never had anybody debate that subject with me, but I believe there is. In the beginning, God created all the creatures to be herbivores. There was no killing, no death. Death entered into the world.
Is that a statement where you were saying that vegetarian lifestyle is a benefit?
Yes, absolutely. Vegetarian lifestyle is the healthiest. It's the healthiest diet, no doubt. I mean, how many people know? Everybody seems to know that eating fatty meats contributes to cardiovascular disease. It wasn't that way in the beginning because God didn't give us that for our food. It wasn't intended that we put all that cholesterol in our bodies and fat, and everything was vegetarian. God gave creatures features that He knew they would need after the fall, like fangs. They didn't need them in the beginning to eat. Fruit bats have fangs, but they eat nothing but fruit.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, there was a lion, I can't remember the name of it. Somebody raised a lion in captivity, and the thing refused to eat meat. It would not. It only ate fruits and vegetables. It would not eat meat. They tried. They fed it raw steak, all kinds of things. Pork, wouldn't eat it. Wouldn't touch it. Smell it, walk away from it. But it would eat all the vegetables and fruit they gave it. Interesting. I mean, why? I don't know. That's a freaky thing for a lion, I know. But in the beginning, everything was vegetarian. It's the way God designed it. So now that animals are eating each other, including man eating other animals, that's not the chain of things that God designed it, intended it to be. It wasn't intended to be that way. So that's going to be there will be ecological effects of that. And we all know about locusts wiping out entire fields of wheat and barley. But I mean, if a locust herd does that, really, do they wipe out much of the barley on the earth? Probably not. There's enough grain grown in Montana every year to feed a million people. They grow enough wheat in Montana alone to make bread to feed all of Europe, just about. I mean, so how much damage can one, very large area of wheat being consumed by a flock of locusts actually do? As far as globally, it's going to be minimal, I think. But I suppose there is an ecological effect. I mean, if a local environment is wiped out of a particular organism because the plant that it needs to subsist on is gone, then that could bring that animal close to extinction or wipe it out. So I think, yeah, there can be ecological effects to the carnivorism, as well as to animals fighting for ecological niches. It wasn't that way in the beginning, though.
Yeah. I'm quite interested.
Hey,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
well, hey, Evan, I was just gonna jump in here if you guys don't mind. I just got a quick comment and a question.
Yeah, man.
All right. So the comment is, I think the correct word to describe the guy that you were trying to speak with is obstreperous. It means very noisy and unruly and hard to control. Um, just like, for example, I had a debate with Skylar Fiction, I think, this past week, and
Oh, yeah.
he was kind of like that in the debate. Yeah, I actually mentioned you in it. But the question that I had is, now, for example, I watched a documentary earlier on different types of adaptations to where different animals con their way into things like some animals would turn their like their appearance different ways to look like a female or something like that, so that they could get by the alpha male to mate with the female or something like that. So the question was really, I'm right when I say that it's not that you're against what some people might call evolution, like adaptation and different types of systems that apply to creatures. It's really just down to the bottom, creation versus common ancestry type evolution, right?
Yeah, it's the idea that all living things are related, and that one type of organism over generations begets a new type of organism, and that when the truth is that God created special kinds of creatures, and they produce varieties of themselves, and that's what man has always experienced throughout history.
Okay, yeah, I agree with you.
And that's what the fossil record indicates too.
Okay, yeah, I was just clarifying just to make sure. I mean, ahead of time. There's a lot of people out.
Yeah, there's no argument. No creationist argues that adaptation isn't true, or some organisms have a tremendous ability to adapt in some pretty interesting ways. That's not a problem, but that's not evolutionary change. See, that kind of change doesn't change body plan or anatomy in any way, so it doesn't move the organism at all towards being a fundamentally different kind of creature. If you get longer antennas or shorter ones, or different color on you, or different pattern, or even a different size, or even a different shape to the head, that by itself is not evolutionary change. And that's all the evolutionists have to point to. Look, this is change, it's evolving. And I say, no, it's changing, but that doesn't mean it's evolving. Show me how change to the shape of the skull is going to make it into a fundamentally different kind of organism, or how is the color or size or pattern going to do that? How is longer or shorter antennas going to do that? Longer claws? Still got claws. That's not moving it towards becoming a fundamentally different kind of organism, see? So there's no evidence of evolutionary change. Adaptation does not equal evolutionary change. That's the thing.
So would it be fair to say that when it comes to the science, not necessarily the philosophy or any other fields, but when it comes to the science, it's fair to say that we're kind of like more like verificationists. If we can verify that it's actually happening, that's what we'll buy. But the extrapolation of that, we're just not going to go in. We're just not going to buy that, right?
That's essentially it, yes. The evolutionists extrapolate in their mind all kinds of things happen. Because an organism can change, they assume, therefore, that it will change in the kinds of ways that evolution requires for evolution to be true, for fundamentally different types of organisms to rise from their predecessors. And that's what they believe. But that's philosophy. That's not science. There's no physical science that supports that idea. Nothing in genetics, nothing in the fossils, nothing that's observable or testable or repeatable. And so it's the philosophy, what it really boils down to is science versus philosophy. The creationist uses science, the evolutionist uses philosophy. They paint it up with philosophical science. They start with scientific ideas, and then they slip their philosophy in there, and they expect you to go, oh, I see, it's true. See, they'll start saying, look, the organism changed in this way, and then, okay, that's science so far. It did adapt in this way. And then they'll say, and so this is how it evolved in such a way that it became such and such, and now we've got the philosophy. See what I mean? That's what evolutionists do. They'll start out with science, and then they'll continue that process with their philosophy and their assumptions, and then they declare it to be science when it's not. All you did was start out with something observable, testable, and repeatable, and then extrapolated and speculated about things and declared those things to be true based on what changes you observed. If we observe, look at the actual changes that they cite when they use the scientific aspects of things, they're not the kinds of changes that have the power to move an organism towards becoming a fundamentally different type of organism at all. And so their science falls short. It stops. And then the rest is their philosophy and fantasy. And that's just not science. It's not scientific. Any more than for me to say, you know, well, I'll give you an example. They look at similarities. They'll take two similarities. They'll take a lobe-finned fish, and they'll say, look, the lobe-finned fish, this particular one is able to waddle around on the shore and for short periods of time. It doesn't have lungs, but it'll flop around on the shore, and that's evidence that fish were, you know, they were inclined to move out there on the shore for some reason, maybe get something to eat that didn't exist in the water. And so, oh, we can see already, bing, a light bulb goes off in the imagination of the evolutionist. Fish moved out onto land. See, the idea comes into their head, right? And so then they look at amphibians, and they say, well, they slither around, they live in the water some of the time, and they spend some of their lives out on land too, so that's what they became. You know, they're still moving, they're not fully on land yet, but they moved, they're partly there. And then they see the reptile, and they say the reptiles live, this reptile at least, lives all of its life on land, or if not most of it, and they'll say, see, then the amphibians, they became those guys. See, well, you're welcome to believe that, but just show me the scientific evidence that that happened, and there is none. That's the thing. So it's philosophy versus science, and if you're talking about science, philosophy doesn't trump science. If you're talking philosophy, philosophy might trump science. But you can't say philosophy is going to trump science if you're talking about science. Philosophical ideas don't disprove scientific evidence. That's what I would have to say. And they don't prove themselves to be scientific evidence. And the whale evolution is another idea. You got Ambulocetus, Rhodocetus, Pecocetus. These creatures, some of them have fins, no fins in the rear. I mean, fins in the rear, and then there's another creature that has a very similar body plan, looks very much like it, no fins in the rear. And then you got whales. And so in the, you know, because their shape of their body is very similar, but not as similar as you would think, because there's some disingenuity going on with how they position the bones when they reconstruct them. I could tell you about that. They make them look like they're swimming much more than these creatures really were. Some of them are actually probably four-legged creatures who walk around on land and maybe never even ventured into the water. But the way that they position their bones to make you look, see, he's swimming. See him swimming. See, that's the way they do, because they believe that. But just because the general shape of the body is like, okay, fins in the back, the next one, very similar body shape, no fins. And the evolutionist, ding, light bulb goes off in his head. They lost their fins. No, you don't have evidence of that. You got evidence of four-legged creature here, a creature with fins in the front and in the back, a creature with no fins in the back, and then whales. Where's your evidence that these are transitional? You got nothing. You just got fins, no fins. That's it. That's not transitional evidence. Evidence would be the creature, you have it with no digits. Or, you know, that would be evidence. And then no femur. See, based on the anatomy, and then eventually, you know, no tibula and no pelvis, and just ischium. That would be maybe evidence of transition. But to go from fins in the rear to no fins, bing, light goes off in the evolutionist's head. They lost their fins. No, you just believe they did. This, for all you know, this is a creature, a species that had fins in the rear. This is one that did not have fins in the rear. And there's plenty of examples like that on the earth now. Where's you just believe that one begat the other over time. But that's not scientific just to believe it. But that's what evolution's, how they work in their mind. Because you see, they're dead set certain in their heart that that's what happened. evolution must be true for these people. So their assumptions have to be correct. That's why it doesn't matter how many mountains of evidence you give an evolutionist that just prove their ideas, their many claims of evolution. No, 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 no. You just don't believe because you don't understand evolution theory. I hear that so much. No, it's not that. It's just that you're willing to believe evolution because your heart says it has to be true because you reject a creator. That's what it is. That's what it really boils down to. They reject a creator, and so it has to be true. Has to be true that nature is the explanation for everything. And that it did happen. Fish had to have crawled out on land and become land-dwelling creatures. It has to have happened. It is what happened. How do I know? Because evolution is true. How do I know evolution is true? Because it must be true. Why must it be true? Because there is no creator. That's how it works.
Yes, Hinduism is true, according to them. That's where it came from, actually.
Well, some parts of the evolution theory did originate with Hinduism. That's true.
It seems like every single facet of it did. Even the idea that that's being preached now by some evolutionists about, you know, the very idea that the universe is eternal, for example.
Yeah. Here, let me give you a basic. That's true, D-Copy. Those are good points. Here's a basic history of the theory of evolution. The theory of evolution came from the Hindu Brahmins. Pantheistic evolution was passed down by Pythagoras to the Greeks because they had contact with the Hindus. Thales of Miletus in his Ionic school branched out from pantheistic evolution to naturalistic evolution. Anaximander, who was the first to suggest that physical forces rather than supernatural ones created the universe. Plato and Aristotle's evolutionary ideas were dispersed through the Alexandrian school in Egypt. These ideas were followed through the Middle Ages by people like Aquinas, into the Renaissance, and into Freemasonry, where they were preserved. Freemasons in the Enlightenment had a rebirth in the philosophy of evolution, while there was a rejection of Christian moral values and a rebellion against God in the 1700s. Lord Mountbatten and Erasmus Darwin carried the philosophy forward, and Charles Darwin, coaxed by Charles Lyell to write about his ideas after his voyage on the Beagle, developed it into a pseudoscientific theory. That's the condensed history of evolution theory, from Hinduism to Charles Darwin. And the Greeks got their Aristotle and Anaximander and Thales of Miletus got their ideas about evolution from the Hindus because the Greeks had contact with India, and they got just in the same way that the Egyptians, that the Greeks got some of their philosophical and religious ideas from the Babylonians because they had contact with Babylon, and then that was poured into the church in Rome when pagans flooded into the church in Rome and founded the Roman Catholic Church. And so you had the ideas of the river Styx and purgatory and eternal torment and work salvation and these kinds of things enter into the Catholic Church because it was pagans that got it. The Greek pagans who got it from the the Babylonian pagans flooded into the church in Rome and carried their ideas with them, and that was the start of Roman Catholicism. So ideas passed on from false ideas passed on from one culture to another is where evolution theory came from.
So it's basically paganism, right?
It is. It's all pagan.
Naturalism, paganism.
Yeah, naturalism is pagan.
Yeah, well, the only difference...
It didn't actually start that way, right? Creation, even the Hindu Brahmins believed in supernatural forces being part of the creation. But man, modern man has turned it into a purely naturalistic idea and separated it from God as much as possible because they refuse to believe in a creator at all. See?
Which means that physical things do magic, that magically sequence the living organisms. Yeah,
the only difference is that the evolution that's taught today is in a more atheistic, secular tone, whereas the evolution that was taught in Hinduism is more pantheistic. That's the only difference. The language is different, and that's all.
Yeah, that's right. And modern men of science are largely atheist, and And so they reject a creator, so they espouse a purely naturalistic form of evolution.
Yeah.
And the problem is that the atheists don't even recognize that they're believing in a pantheistic belief, or I mean a pagan belief. And even though they say it's science, it's still magic that they believe in.
Well, the Bible says that there's nothing new under the sun, so we should take that to heart and not even take it with a grain of salt. When it says that there's nothing new under the sun, it means exactly what it says.
Exactly. Yeah.
Have you ever heard of Dr. Carl Warner? I'm reading an article about him, and I'm assuming you heard of him, Nephilim.
Yeah, he's done a documentary that I was talking to this MMArtist fellow about.
Oh,
yeah, which shows testimonies from numerous scientists at museums of natural history that dinosaurs and modern birds coexisted all along. We've got the physical evidence. They've been digging up modern mammals and birds out of dinosaur digs for decades, but not telling the public about this because that's contradicts what they've been telling us. Hey, Neil, they've been telling us for many decades that modern birds went extinct millions of years before, modern birds came into existence, millions of years after dinosaurs went extinct. That's what they've been telling us. That's what they still tell you in textbooks. And now the physical evidence comes to light that they've been lying to us the whole time about that.
yeah, I put an article on the side there, linking from creation.com. They go into his findings, and they found all kinds of different birds in the Cretaceous layer, apparently. And they've been hiding it for years.
Yeah.
And it just shows how disingenuous the so-called scientific community really is. It can't be trusted.
That's right. That's absolutely. What do you call it when, for 100 years they've been digging this evidence up, and then telling the public that something that completely different? I would say that's lying. That constitutes a lie. That's not just. That's not an omission. That's not a guiltless omission.
I agree.
That's a lie.
That's misrepresenting the facts.
Well, when you have the evidence, you show it to them. You claim to be open-minded and all about the facts. You don't hide the evidence just because it contradicts your theory. Okay, you show the evidence, and that's the bottom line, and let people come to their own conclusions.
Yeah. In fact, I'm looking at that link you just gave me, and they say in here, for example, one example, they say, to the surprise of many, ducks, squirrels, platypus, beaver-like, and badger-like creatures have been found in dinosaur-era rock layers, along with bees, cockroaches, frogs, and pine trees. And according to evolutionists, of course, all those things didn't come into existence until after dinosaurs went extinct. And I'll continue reading. Most people don't know T-Rex walking along a duck flying overhead, but that's what the so-called dino-era fossils would prove. And then they say this. A creature called Gansus was found, supposedly 120 million years old, apart from a few features like wing claws still found on some modern birds. It looked very much like a modern duck or loon. But the standard dinosaur age scenario is so entrenched that one National Geographic news article declared, and he quotes them, it may have looked like a duck and acted like a duck, but Gansus was no duck. See, they won't even admit the thing is a duck.
Yeah, the word, how you say goose in Portuguese or Latin language is ganso. It's the same thing.
Oh, that's probably where, they might have taken it from that.
Well, ganso is basically the same thing.
Yeah, okay. Well, this is probably Latin. They use Latin a lot, but not necessarily.
Right.
They don't always use Latin when they name new species they discover and stuff.
But it would be basically the same thing, though. I mean.
Yeah.
Just different language.
Right. Well, it just shows a relationship in language between the Romance languages and Latin. Spanish, Portuguese, and Latin. There's a relationship. Yeah. Historical relationship. From the same
what about
language family, probably.
What about the old common sense phrase? If it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck, right? These
That's
guys are like,
right.
no.
Yeah, and they're finding beaver-like creatures. In other words, it looks like a beaver, but it may have a muzzle that's a little longer than a typical beaver today, or its legs be a little bit longer, but it sure looks like a beaver. So it can easily be considered a variety of beaver. You know, it absolutely falls within the variation within the beaver kind, right? And so they're finding these things in the, you know, it's got the fur, it's got the paddle tail, it's got the teeth, and it's a beaver. It's just a little differently shaped beaver than the ones we typically see today, the varieties that are existing on there. And they'll say, "Oh, that's not a beaver. That's a beaver-like." Oh yeah, please with that. It's a beaver, for crying out loud. You're going to say the same thing about horse kind? It's not really a horse. It's just like a horse, but it's not really a horse.
And elephants.
Yeah.
All that stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I said it's like putting a lipstick on a pig, you know, that expression. I tried to twist it around a little bit. No matter how many times you say it's evolution, I mean, we're not going to, you know, it's like you're repeating the same thing as if we're going to believe it because you repeat it more. You know?
Yeah. They say in this article here, interviewed in Creation magazine, Dr. Carl Werner pointed out that nearly 432 mammal species have been identified in dinosaur rock, including nearly 100 complete mammal skeletons. Yet in his extensive travels of 60 museums across the world researching his documentary series, only a few dozen of these species were featured in displays with not one complete skeleton. So they're really trying to mislead the public by showing only a smattering of evidence. And if somebody was to say, "Oh, wait a minute, I'm a paleontology student, isn't that isn't that a beaver skull?" And what would they say in the museum? "Oh no, that's not a beaver. That's a relative of the beaver." Oh, okay. Not
What
really.
does that even mean? Relative of the beaver.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they use that rat thing as proof as like the origin for all mammals. I forgot at one time I forgot the name of the rat, whatever it was called. It was like a cross between I don't know. I would call it one of those Australian water things. You know, the big. I can't even think of the name of it. I'm sorry, I'm lost for words. It's like a big. It's like one of the first mammals. They say, "Oh, this is where all mammals came from," or "This is where we got so far." You know. I forgot what it's called. I'll have to look it up again. But they have it in the Smithsonian.
I'm not sure what creature you're talking about.
It's like a pachyderm, basically, is what it looks like.
In Australia?
No, I was just making a relation to it, not saying that's what it was, but basically they have like this common ancestor of all mammals, like down to this rat thing that they used to purport. I forgot what it used to be called.
Was it be a taper or no?
Yeah, something like that.
It had to be a small taper, I guess.
Yeah, I forgot the name of it, but yeah, they of course that was debunked a long time ago. I haven't heard anybody use that one lately, but
a tapir is a pig-like creature, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got a small trunk.
Yeah, kind of like you know, looks like an aardvark, but it's not fully an aardvark or something.
Yeah. Has a really long muzzle. It's almost like a trunk. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a deer that has a trunk too, but that's beside the point.
Yeah. It's very much like a deer, and it has a little mini trunk on it. I've seen photographs of that.
A jackalope. No, I was just messing with it. Whatever they call it, I don't know. But yeah, I seen it in the Smithsonian. It was an exhibit. Like, this is where all mammal species came from, basically, is what they used to say.
And then there's a bird that has its tongue going around the back of its head.
Woodpecker.
Yeah, the woodpecker, in order to accommodate it.
Mm-hmm. You know, also the woodpecker, every time his beak slams into a tree, he has to shut his eyes briefly. And so, when you hear a woodpecker going, his eyes are opening and shutting with every impact, like shutters on a camera. The reason he has to do that because the impact is so abrupt and so forceful that if he didn't, his eyes would literally pop out of his skull. So to prevent that from happening, the woodpecker shuts his eyes just before impact with it every time. So if he's tapping this fast, his eyeballs are shutting that fast to keep them from popping out of his head every time his beak slams into the wood.
Right, because they have a very high metabolism comparative to us.
That reminds me how fast chameleons change color when they looked at the skin cells on animals, reptiles that have that ability, how fast that they can shade the cells and stuff like that. That's amazing.
Mm.
I think they took a sample of some skin of, what was it? It was I forgot what animal it was, but they took it, and you wouldn't believe how fast it was an octopus. The octopus that it could basically turn into, to any shape, any color, anything. You know what I'm saying? And how fast these cells change color was amazing. They couldn't, I don't think there could be a calculation on it on some points.
Yeah, it's amazing. And not only do they change color, but they get patterns on their skin that matches the impression of what they're around. And even they can even cause textural changes to their skin, like their skin bumpy and hard looking and stuff to mimic coral and stuff. It's phenomenal.
That's what I couldn't believe it, how fast the cells change color. You know what I'm saying? Like they put it under a microscope and it was like, I forgot how many tens of times it takes to do it. But then you take that into consideration, like in probability factor, how many times through evolution does that need to go on for it to be that fast?
Just evolution can't begin to explain design features like that. Just think of the woodpecker. How did natural selection select for a bird that would learn somehow to shut his eyeballs every time his beak slammed into the wood? What would happen? The first time the bird tries that, bang, his eyeballs come out and he goes away. He dies because his eyes are now sticking out of his head and they get infected and debris on them and infected and scratched up and cut, and he goes off, dies from an infection in his head. So how many fail? What's the process of learning this? What are other woodpeckers watching, and they before any of them do any pecking, they watch this one guy die and they say, oh, okay, I'll try it, and he does it and dies, and others eventually some woodpecker gets the idea, hey, I better shut my eyeballs. These guys are popping their eyes out of their head. So they learned to do this by natural selection, right? I don't think so. No, that's nonsense to believe that could happen. Natural selection cannot explain the woodpecker knowing to shut his eyes every time his beak hits the wood. It had to have been imparted. This knowledge is imparted to the bird. It's instinct from the creation. You can't explain that with evolution. Because the first one that didn't do it right, he's a goner. Every time they did it, unless they all learned to do it somehow. And what do woodpeckers have, little schools where they teach their kids when they're starting to go out? Now, before you start picking the wood, you got to pay attention now, kids. Make sure you shut your eyes every time. And so they all pass the woodpecker, classes before they go off into the world and real world and start pecking wood, right? I don't think so. They know it from birth. They know how to do this.
I think that's where instinct comes into play, and instinct would have to be programmed somehow.
That's right. God gave those creatures that knowledge from when he created them, and they've always had it. It's the same is true with all kinds of creatures.
Or even the ability to have an instinct would have to be programmed.
Everything is evidence of design. Every single thing.
Yep.
There isn't anything that's not evidence of intelligent design. Nothing. You can't point to anything that isn't. Not even the water molecule. Nothing. It's all design. And
even atheist brain?
Yes, even atheist brains. Brain clearly designed.
Most of the most common elements are essential working parts inside of us.
I mean, do try to convince yourself that molecules, mutations, and natural selection developed massive amounts of neurons, which form networks of electrical networks so highly sophisticated that we couldn't begin to reproduce it with electronics today. We don't have the technology to make anything on that scale that would be anywhere near that complex. And natural selection did this? What in the world? You gotta be kidding me. If there's a fantasy story, that's it. That evolution produced a brain. You gotta be kidding me.
No, it's just natural selection is God. So that's, or whatever mechanism that they want to use.
Yeah, that nervous system to respond to all the different conditions that the octopus runs into, change of colors, change of
Texture,
texture, and its
patterns.
surroundings. That that's a lot of wiring.
Yeah,
to
man.
do that.
Oh, it's beyond that. It's maybe I can show a video of that happening right here. For people who've never seen this, it's the mimicry.
That'd be an evolution. I mean, that would be an electrician's nightmare to put it all together.
It's absolutely mind-bending what you see. I've seen this video. At first, when I watched this, I could not tell what I was looking at was an octopus. I just say, okay, I'm looking at the bottom of the ocean there. That's interesting. Where's the where's the octopus in that scene? And then the thing comes to life, and I'm like, what? You gotta be kidding me. You're not gonna believe this, okay? Let me show you some video.
And that octopus that changes into a piece of coral or something?
Yes, I'm gonna show this to you. Hopefully you can see it. Maybe it'll screen share properly. You gotta see this. It's mind-bending, man. This is unbelievable.
You want me to show it? I can get it.
Wait a second here. Let's see here. Okay, now, let me see if I can screen share. I hope you see this. Okay. There we go. All right, now I'm going to play this. Watch this. Now, you see that coral? See it, coral? Watch that coral. Is that unbelievable? Let's watch that again. Are you guys seeing it?
Unbelievable.
That is a trip.
Imagine if the military had camouflage like that. I'm sure the Department of Defense is just salivating at the prospect.
Now, is that not truly amazing? I mean, see, God can design things like that. Believing nature could do that is complete lunacy. It's just absurd. This is the kind of thing, this is just one of countless things that proved to me years ago evolution was false and that creation is a fact. I mean, I studied the subject in all kinds of ways, all kinds of arguments, detailed arguments about biology and stuff, and evolutionists and creationists alike, and I was convinced by it. But some of this kind of evidence figured in as well, because I now realize that believing that something like that could come into being by evolutionary process is just utterly absurd. And so that's why I say, when you show this kind of thing to somebody who believes in evolution, if they don't start doubting evolution immediately, it's because they're either completely unknowing about the subject matter, or they're determined not to believe the truth in their heart.
Also, Neff, there's one called a mimic octopus that mimics other creatures, and it does it so perfectly that other creatures can't even tell that it's not that other creature.
Yeah.
It'll walk on its legs like something else, or it'll puff itself up. I don't know if you see my picture, but yeah, it mimics other animals, and that's how it keeps away from being eaten.
Wow. Wow, it's pretty crazy. Evolution could never begin to explain such things. Just no way.
Yeah, I couldn't believe what it was doing. It started to act like it was a tumbleweed. It was flinging around like it was like one of those ocean floor tumbleweeds. And it looked like one too. And then it also puffs itself up to look like a tiger fish or something like that. Very intimidating to other creatures.
Did
They
you
don't want
see?
to touch it because of the
Did
color
you
pattern.
did you see those things that popped up out of its head?
Yeah.
Yes. That was amazing. Watch those little. Well, no, if you go back a little bit further, you'll see.
Here, I'll put it on full screen if I can. Yeah.
Wait. Watch
look
those little spike-like things on the top of its head. Watch them.
Yeah, it moves them around. They get longer too.
Yeah, it's bars. It's pretty bizarre.
I think it turns into a sea snake too, or something like that.
Well, you know, those are its eyes, but those aren't its eyes. It's making its eyes look bigger than they really are. It's making its eyes look like eyes. You know what I'm saying? Like those two bulbs aren't the full eye. So there it goes. Right there.
Wow.
It does all kinds of stuff. I was amazed to figure out it looks like an anglerfish or something like that sometimes. It can change shape so many times. I think it's like something like 100-something different ways it can change shape and form. It tries to make itself look like a crab also sometimes. See how it's got those spiny things?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's looking like a flatfish. You seen that? It swam off like a what do you call those, flounders? Sometimes it mimics a flounder.
Bioluminescence is another example of astonishing design. Bioluminescent creatures are absolutely.
Excuse me for 1 second. Neo, do you have Steve unblocked? I saw you on the side chat say that you were.
Oh, I didn't know he wanted in. Let me get out of here and I'll come back in after he's in here.
Okay, thanks.
What about this Boris guy? I mean, anybody know him?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is he atheist or believer?
No, he's a believer.
Oh, he's a believer. Okay. You gotta watch out for the Steve guy. I don't know. He's a little bit shady.
Opinions are like asses. Everybody's got one.
Yeah, opinions don't approve anything.
Not the point.
So I'm looking for an example of bioluminescent animals. There's plenty of videos about it. It'll blow your mind. Show some of that. And it blows my mind that people can actually, after considering the arguments, actually believe that evolution was capable of producing such a thing.
Well, the structure itself has to be put into place before it can be anything. I mean, it can't vary until the structure is already in place, put in place.
Hello, Marie.
Hi, how are you?
I'm all right, I guess. Thanks.
I just wanted to show my face real quick. Now I'm going to cover it up because I look terrible.
Okay, so here's a bioluminescence at work.
Well,
These are creatures which produce light patterns, look like light shows, some of them. So far, I haven't seen a really, really impressive example, but there are some coming. Here's one. Look at that. Thing looks like a Christmas tree on fire, man. That's a creature in the ocean. It's making a light show. I see various colors: blue, yellow, green, orange, violet. It's amazing. The video's not playing very well in this hang on. Anyway, that was a terrible example. It didn't work out too well for me showing what I'm talking about, but you get the idea. The examples of bioluminescent creatures, some of them are just mind-bending. You look at them and just say, what? That's crazy. They look like Christmas tree lights, some of them. What in the world? We got somebody in here in a mask. Eamon, what are you doing?
Okay, this is a serial prank I would play on people. I would go into school in the morning. I'll show you what I have done here. So basically, I have an old mask right here, and then a soccer ball. And what I would do is I would basically paint little eyes and eyebrows on the soccer ball. I'd put the mask over it, and then I'd put the soccer ball on top of my head, walk into school, even though I'm only about 5 foot. Only I'm not extremely tall. I'll walk into school looking like 7 feet tall. I'll be like this gigantic bird-like creature, and it works especially well when I add a beak. It's quite entertaining.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Bizarre, yeah.
Yeah.
Only one word to describe it.
Stay away from children in that getup. That's what I suggest strongly. You may find yourself in the back seat of a police car.
Okay. Yeah.
Weird. Okay. I don't know what that is, but it looks pretty impressive, whatever kind of gear that is.
Yeah, it's a it's actually basically just a protective faceplate. So if you're doing something, and it also has provisions as well to protect someone's nose and mouth. So if you're doing some heavy work that had dangerous items shooting into your face, then ideally something like this is what you'd want to wear. So I could, if you're doing like arc or MIG welding, and you're having of course you'd have basically a faceplate over this, but it's always good to have extra protection.
Yeah, definitely. Burning bits of metal flipping into my eyeballs or my cheeks, for sure.
Yeah. So you would challenge, I can't remember his name, it was MMArtist141 or something like that. You challenge MMArtist141 to a debate on some issue.
I'm challenging him to a structured debate with a moderator because he seems incapable of being in one of my hangouts without constantly talking over me, and so there's no having a discussion with him. So if he's so sure evolution is true and the creationists are just full of junk, then I don't see why he shouldn't accept my challenge. I doubt he will, but because most don't. But I thought I'd just put it out there.
Okay, cool. Well, I need to get back to Tommy as I was doing something with him. I'll see you.
Okay, take care. I pronounced his name wrong. I said Eamon. I think his name is Eamon, is how it's pronounced. He says it's Irish. Eamon, I think. That's how it's pronounced. So the story of the evolutionist, the evolutionist capable of producing all these crazy ingenious things about living things. It's really, if you're actually honest with yourself and you examine the features of living things, you just can't help yourself. You have to wonder, how is that logical to believe that unguided processes, unintelligent, unguided processes are capable of producing such a thing as mimicry, bioluminescence, anything, genetics, intercellular systems like an organism, which have organs like a human being. They have nervous system, cardiovascular system, pancreas, liver, kidneys, spleen, and all these things, stomach. These things all work together, chemically and stuff, to produce a living organism. How in the world can evolution explain it?
They can't. I'm not a very intelligent person. I'm really not into science. I don't need to know. All I know is that it was left here for us to find. Somebody created it.
It was created.
And it's so mind-boggling to think that men, women want to take his creation, what God himself created, and somehow they think that they're the ones that came up with the idea when really all they did was discover what was left here for us to find. It's amazing to me. It really is. I don't know why anybody would even argue it. I don't understand it. I don't understand their point of view, and that was why I wanted to talk with you so bad, because I don't understand the argument. There is no argument. It's here. You can't explain it away. Someone else created it for us to find. Period.
That's true. But Marie, that the evolutionists will say, okay, so that's a fallacious argument. Just because you can't explain how it happened doesn't mean it was created or that nature didn't do it. And I can kind of see the truth, a vein of truth in what they're saying there. But that's not really what it is. It's I think boils down to two things. It's so obviously created.
Amen.
That we shouldn't even be arguing about it. And secondly, if it's the properties of the features that it does have that we talk about, that is the evidence that it was created. So it's not just that we can't explain how nature could have made something. It's that we can explain the designness of it, that it is a property of design, that it is a property of intelligence or information, or that it's biomechanical, that it has a mechanical feature and functionality to it, and this, it's not just that we can't explain how nature could have done it. That's why we believe it was created. We believe it was created. One of the reasons we do is because we can see the features of it are evidence of creation. They're evidence of design, and that's so the evolutionist argument there is really a fallacious one.
Yeah, I just, to me, it's not worth arguing over. I just find it absolutely. I just think it's just such a waste of time. It's just such a waste of time.
Well, I think it's a waste of their time to tell us that it evolved. I find value in showing that the evolution theory is a lie because so many millions of people around the world believe it, and because I absolutely despise the fact that they force our kids to learn this lie in schools, and that they pump their heads with it and tell them it's the truth, and tell them it's all scientific and it's verified and it's just the way it is. If you don't like it, you don't have to believe it, but this is what it is. And they desperately try to indoctrinate new generations of people to believe this, because they want children to believe it from a young age, and the younger they get them to believe it, the better, because they want them to grow up into adults that don't believe in God. Some people would say, oh, that's not what it is. But yes, that is it. That is the agenda. It absolutely is. If they can if they can raise up entire generations of young people who become adults later, who become millions of adults that don't believe that God explains the existence of man, then we don't. Then they're easily trapped into the idea that there is no God. That and then from there goes all the moral decay of the world. All the false moral ideas that doest thou will. There's no moral standard. We can do what we want. There's no such thing as sin. All that. That's the real agenda. That's the agenda. And it may not be necessarily the agenda of every individual person who preaches evolution. They just might be a university professor or a high school teacher that actually believes it and themselves are falling into the lie. They might be one who has to teach it even though they don't believe it, because they know if they don't, they won't get to keep their job. They got a teacher's degree, and then they realized, you know what, oh no, I really didn't think about it too much, but here I am in the middle of my college degree, and I just coming to the grips with the fact that if I don't teach evolution theory, I won't be able to have my job. So I guess I'll go ahead, I've invested this much in my education, I'll get my degree, I'll go on and get my teacher's certificate, I'll teach the stuff in school, and I'll go home and ask God to forgive me for telling the world a lie.
And there's no evidence for what they're pushing.
Well, and isn't the decision then a matter of choice? He's not going to take away anybody's free will. And we're told biblically that he's in control. Those people who choose not to believe, it's their choice. God, it's not God's fault. You can't blame God. And I think that's something too that they'll kind of go back to and say, well, God, why would God create a world where sin had run rampant, and why do people get hurt? Why does he let innocent people die? Mm-hmm. Well, what they don't understand is he is from eternity. He's got a plan. This isn't all there is.
Right.
This isn't all there is. And if this was all there was, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why he would have even created it. Right. But I guess in my mind, yes, are we supposed to contend for the faith? Yes, we are. But are we supposed to argue with people that clearly have made up their mind? I just think about that passage, where they were going out and they were spreading the gospel, and God told them, if they don't listen, go. Just go away.
Yeah, I understand, Marie, what you're saying, but the reason I debate is because I see this as value in it. There are going to be 16-year-old. I have actually gotten messages from kids who are in high school in Skype and stuff, telling me that they listened to one of my debates with some atheists about evolution theory, and now they're questioning evolution. And I have some hard questions to ask my high school teacher about evolution, and because I've watched some of your videos and some of your debates, and I'm not sure I believe in evolution anymore. And so the reason I do it is because I know that there'll be people who are not hardcore atheists, not reject the truth, not determined to believe a lie, who will watch this kind of thing, and they will see that the creationist has the upper hand and the evidence is in their favor. And they will question then what they believe. And they may get somebody else that there's a close friend to question, hey, go look at the video of this guy, Nephilim Free Debate, these evolutionists. He just owned them on that subject, man. You got to see this. Or somebody, not just me, somebody else. And they might do it, share the video by email or something. And it's to undo the damage to the minds of people, especially young people in this world. If they can see creationists refute evolution theory, then they can question the lies that they're fed in school and in public education and come out of it. And maybe they'll be inclined to believe in a creator, that they have a God. If they realize, well, wait a minute, it does look like life was created and the evolution is a lie. Okay, so now if it was created, who's the creator? This guy who was debating that I saw refute these evolutionists, he's a Christian. Maybe he's got the truth. He says Jesus made it. Is that true?
Yeah,
Maybe I should look into it. That's the reason I do it.
Yeah, I guess I never really looked at it from that point of view. But then I don't feel led or called to defend the gospel that way.
Yeah, well, I defend the gospel in other ways. I mean, I talk about the gospel, and I've got videos about Christianity and about the Bible and stuff on my YouTube channel. I intend to do more of those. But my primary thrust is evolution, because it's what And I think part of the reason for that is because it's one of the things that God used to draw me to the truth. I believed in God already, and I did believe in Jesus Christ, but I didn't. There was part of my understanding that was missing, and that understanding was that God's Word is the truth. You know, I had started to fall into this thing. I'll give you an example. I had a conversation with somebody once who believed, about 10 years, 12, 13 years ago, that believed, well, Adam and Eve weren't actually individuals, but they were tribes of man. So when the Bible says Cain slew Abel, it's not a man named Cain slew Abel. It's that the tribe of Cain went up against the tribe of Abel and beat them in war. And so this is a very evolutionist idea. So you can merge evolution theory with that and say these are early tribes of mankind that not long after man evolved, you know, from Homo sapiens into Homo sapiens sapiens. So you can get that idea, right? And that argues against the literalness of the Bible. And Jesus Christ confirmed it when he said, have you not read that he who made them in the beginning made them male and female, and man will, and a woman would become one flesh. So Christ confirmed the Genesis creation account as literally true as it's given in Genesis. And so I've discovered that creation is a very important part of the entire Bible, because some of the gospel stands on the foundation of creation. And so if I couldn't trust creation to be true, I couldn't trust the Bible. And so I started investigating, because I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I believe the Bible is true, but isn't it really just a bunch of allegorical stuff from some Hebrew religious guys and, you know, burned incense a lot, you know, and worship God, but never actually saw him do anything? And, you know, I guess Christ is the truth, huh? I guess he's the truth. That's kind of how I started thinking. And so and then I realized that if evolution is true, I can't really trust the Bible. So I started investigating, and after a long investigation, very intensive, when I discovered creation is absolutely the truth and evolution is not only false, it's a bunch of crap and it's lies. And it's so obviously false. And that confirmed for me that I can trust the Bible word for word to be the truth. And that gave me a whole new perspective on how I can trust God when he says a thing, or who God is and what his character is like. You know, that the Bible is the truth, and it's not just a bunch of Hebrew whack nuts in the desert, you know, burning incense and slaughtering animals to an invisible God they never had anything to do with, but just believe one generation to another. It's out there somewhere, you know. And it gave me a whole new perspective on God and who Jesus Christ is and how I should trust him. And so it was very important to me, and I think God used this process of learning that evolution is false and that his word is correct when he says he created it, and he created it what day, is all the truth. And when Jesus Christ quoted Genesis on the creation, etc., and all the flood was a true event, because Jesus Christ referred to it. He said, you know, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, and the flood came and took them all away. You know, well, you know, I don't know. You know, it was a local flood. The Babylonian story was probably true too, and the Egyptians have their myth, and it's not. So, wait a minute. The Bible is true, or is it not true? The flood is a fact, and then I go to study, and then I find out, oh boy, is it ever a fact? The Earth is covered with 1,800 meters on average of sedimentary strata filled with rapidly buried creatures with no erosion or time in between the strata, going down 1,800 meters into the Earth. The flood is a real thing, all right. So when Jesus Christ said the flood came and took them all away, he wasn't kidding. You can trust the Bible, word for word. It is God's word. It's the truth. And science verifies it. So for me, it was a different path. I understand my path is not the same as some other paths, and I'm going to see value in things that other people are not. For me, it was very important because it gave me a completely new perspective on how I can trust God in his word. When I discovered creation is true, the flood was a real historical geologic event, not just some myth that passed on from the Babylonians to the Hindus to the adopted by the Hebrews, that it was a real thing. And it has important. And look how important the flood is to the truth. The flood is representative of, God used real physical geologic event to make an allusion to Jesus Christ. The ark is like Jesus Christ. He's a doorway we have to go through to be saved. And he made a call for people to get on the ark to be saved, and nobody took the offer. Nobody, not one person, took the offer. And that supports the New Testament, which says nobody comes to God except nobody comes unto the Father unless drawn the Son unless drawn by the Father. So you're not even going to come to Jesus Christ unless God pulls you by the ear. And then once he does that, you can reject it or accept it. But if he pulls you to the ear, then you have a chance. And so Christ is alluded to by the ark of Noah. See, so God's word and history and everything that has happened is tied in so tightly with the truth, with creation, and with history, and with the scriptures, that even the Ark of Noah, the geologic event that evolutionists claim did not even happen, is an allusion himself to Jesus Christ. So for me, it was a very profound and important thing to learn that the Bible can be trusted word for word, because I've discovered that science actually supports the Word of God. I know that's not going to be everybody's experience, but that was mine.
And there's evidence to prove that the flood actually happened too. I mean, it sounds crazy, but the planet, the fossils, everything points to a flood. Can't deny that.
Absolutely. In fact, there's more physical evidence for the flood of Noah than there is for any other thing in all of science. You're sitting on top of many meters of evidence of it, proof of it right now. If you were to get a drill, I don't know where you live, but typically, if you got a drilling machine, a bunch of oil driller guys came with all these mega pipes and the diamond head bits, and they spent months setting up for it, and they drilled a hole down into the earth right where you're sitting, they would likely go down a half a mile before they came to the bottom of the sedimentary strata that are filled with rapidly buried creatures. That's how much sedimentary strata were deposited onto the continents by the flood. It can only be explained by the flood. Nothing else can explain it. Local floods can't do it. Think about this. A local flood only moves materials from one part of the earth to another on the surface, right? Maybe a mile away, maybe 20 miles at the most, but it's, maybe 100 yards. But it can never wash the earth down deep, that deep in the sedimentary strata. That takes strata upon strata upon strata, all being laid down by moving water, building up vertically on top of each other. If only the flood of Noah can explain that.
It's the only history we have.
No
other history. No other history. It's the only history we have.
That's it.
We can't make up history that's not there. We can only take the evidence that there is.
I don't know. I've never really had to struggle with these things. There was just something in me. I mean, even when I was little kid, I just knew. I just knew, and it took, I'm 56 years old, and it took a long, long time. But what convinced me? What convinces me is how men and women and children hurt each other by sin, and that's what convinces me.
Mm-hmm.
And how God hates sin, and what people don't understand is that's why He gave us the laws. Sin is the people don't understand. We are so fallen from what God intended for us, and it's not His fault. We chose,
Mm-hmm.
and just like Satan chose to fall away. And I believe all of it. I didn't need somebody to tell me that science was created by somebody, unbelievable. First of all, I mean, He created it all of it, and I don't question that. And I understand but then I'm not into science. I'm not into needing evidence. The evidence is all around me. It speaks to me very clearly. God's word makes sense to me. There's something in me that is drawn, and I don't know how to explain that.
Yeah, well, that's wonderful.
You know, I mean,
It's
and,
not that way for everybody, though, I'm afraid.
no,
You know?
and you know what? It just simply amazes me that you can. I don't know how you can't see. How people can't see. I don't understand that. I never did understand that.
Mm.
And like I said, 56 years, and one hell of a ride. And I hate to put it that way, but it has been. It's been one heck of a ride. And I just can't wait to go home. I don't belong here. I don't want to be here.
I can understand. You know, there are people who never bought into the lie of evolution or that the flood wasn't true, any of those things, and they're blessed. You know, that's wonderful. But that's not the case for a lot of people, millions of people, even millions of Christians. And so that's why I like to show the truth. When I talk about science, I try to show the truth of creation, and God's word is trustworthy on it. When I discuss human history and the Tower of Babel affair and the relationship to the human languages as having come from Babel and the various tribes of man in the Tower of Babel, the Table of Nations given in Genesis, show that with etymology that the tribes of man came from those men named in that genealogy in that Tower of Babel affair, in the Table of Nations, in the Bible, is real human history, and we can verify that with outside sources. I like doing things like that to show that the Bible is real history, and this is the real history, not the history of this earth you get in school. That the Egyptians, the Mesopotamians learned how to plant corn or not corn, but wheat and barley and stuff 10,000, 11,000 years ago, which is 4,000 years older than the earth. No, and that the Egyptian kings list goes back 3,500 BC, 3,200 BC, which it does not, and that man evolved into Homo sapiens from Homo ergaster and such creatures 250,000 or 400,000 years ago. No, that's not the real history of the earth, and that man came out of Africa, 1.4 million years ago. No, that's not the truth. See? God's word shows the truth, and I love showing those kinds of things. What you see on the screen right now is proof of the flood. Well, it's evidence of it. This is a boulder, a quartzite rock, sealed in some strata inside the side of a mountain. Now, if you'll notice, these strata are bent going around this boulder, which means that the strata were soft plastic material before they hardened and concreted into stone when that rock was buried inside those strata. And that proves that the strata down below, say waist level with the man, then shoulder height, and above him, and above those, are all the same age. One is not older than the other. But the evolutionists would have to believe that the strata in that photograph down by that man's feet are thousands and thousands of years younger, or older rather, than the strata up by his head, and that the strata 20 feet above him are thousands and thousands and thousands of years older than the strata right there where his head is. But this boulder proves otherwise. This whole mountain is comprised of these bent strata, which proves that it was uplifted. The whole mountain was created when it was soft sedimentary material laid down by the flood of Noah, and that you've been told a lie in school. Those strata aren't millions of years apart in age. They were all created during the flood of Noah. The evidences like this are countless. It would be impossible to show all such evidences for the flood, because I would literally have to take a photograph of every square foot of the surface of the earth to provide all the evidence for the flood. I would have to go to every mountain and photograph every mountain from many angles. I would have to photograph many, many, many places all over the earth. Every valley, every hill, every canyon, every erratic boulder, everything, to provide all the evidence of the flood, because it's all evidence of the flood.
See, and I just don't need to be convinced. I don't need any any of the evidences
Well,
that.
I'm happy for
No,
you.
and I know that
There are
that's
people
their
that
thing,
do.
and I get that. I really, it wasn't something that I had thought about until you explained it earlier, which now I understand, and I'm glad that I asked, because for a while there I was just thinking, why argue with these people over something that's clearly. But now I understand. I mean, there's a reason. There's a reason why you're doing that, and if people are coming, I mean, clearly God has called you to do that. You know. I don't have that hunger or thirst for science, and that's I'm kind of like total opposite of that, if you know what I mean. I mean, everybody's called to do something, right? And that's what you've been called to do, and you do it well. I was just wondering, you know, should we be arguing about something? And clearly you've stated already, and now I can understand why you take the position that you do. It does cause one to think if they are being, you know, deceived in that area. You wake them up. Get it? I get it.
It's I think Neff, you did a very good job. I think yesterday that one atheist, he was talking about the evolution, and you stepped in and you were like, can I see some evidence? And he ran away.
Where I don't remember that. What was in
Was it yesterday, the day before yesterday? I don't remember.
In my hangout?
Yes, in your hangout.
Okay, I must have been sleepy or tired. I don't remember that happening, but that's happened quite a few times. They make a claim, and then you ask them what the evidence of it is. They don't know any. Well, sometimes when that happens, it's because they read that something is true on an atheist or evolutionist website, and they never actually studied it at all, so they don't know why it's supposedly true. But so then they come in here and say, oh, you know, but such and such is true. And then you say, oh, really? Well, what's the evidence? Uh-oh. I didn't actually read anything. I just read that it was true on an atheist website. Came in here to try to take a stab at you with it. I better go, because I don't know how to give an explanation for my evidence. I just believed it. I didn't expect for you to question it. That happens sometimes.
You were talking to a man. He came out of a debate. He was just in a debate with, and he was talking about how he destroyed the creationist, and then you were like, well, let's see the evidence, sir. And he's like, I'll be back later. Bye bye.
You know, I just
I'm
don't.
not prepared.
I just don't understand why someone would not spend as much time thinking about reading God's Word and really, really considering that, if indeed at the end of their life there was something else to be had. It just doesn't equate with me. I don't understand that. It makes no sense to me. If there was something more to this than just this life, isn't it worth really looking into that? Isn't it worth knowing? I mean, if there really is a heaven and a hell, and what does that mean? Isn't it worth investigating, even just from that point of view, that I could have life after death without sin, without, you know? But so many people think, well, who does he think he is to create this, and then walk away from it, you know, which again, it brings up a whole host of other problems, and again, us wanting to think that we're all that and not have to follow rules or not be accountable for behavior. But if they understood what really we do to each other here, would they want an eternity where we just continue to go on hurting each other through our sin, through our selfish self-centeredness? or would they rather have someone give them a law to live by, where love and forgiveness and true caring about each other, without any hypocrisy, without any need, without any lack? You know, to me, that just doesn't make sense why somebody wouldn't want to think on that level.
It's hard. Yeah, I know. It's hard to understand how people can want there to be no such thing as God. That is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't get it. I just don't understand it.
Well,
They'll take God. They'll take God as long as they can keep their sin. That's the problem.
You know what? Sin hurts people. It hurts people. And you know, I think actually what they think is that we think we're better than them, and we're not. We're just saying, you know what? We agree with God, and we don't want to live in that kind of a world. We don't want to hurt people, and we don't want to be hurt by people.
And Marie, you know, that's exactly why I'm so quick to tell somebody when I talk about things with an atheist. That's why I'm so quick to acknowledge that I'm a wretched sinner and I don't deserve Jesus Christ. I don't have any hesitation about doing that. I've done it many times. I've said so many times, and I don't have any qualms about doing that, because I don't want them to think. I don't want anybody getting the idea that Christians are people who think they're holier than thou and we're just better than you guys. It's not about that at all.
No, it's not. And I think
I make it clear when I discuss these things with them sometimes.
I think what they think is that we're pious and that we're trying to be something that we're not, when in fact we just simply want to obey a person who has given us the freedom to worship and know, you know what, we're forgiven and we don't want to live that way. We want to live unto Him, and you know, I think so many times, even as a Christian, I sometimes look at other Christians and think, wow, you're really trying really hard, and I really see the effort that you're trying to do. But who wouldn't want to do that as a child to their father? Wouldn't want to obey and honor their father if it was a good father, right? So, you know, I think that they just think that we're over the top, and I think they don't quite understand why we behave the way we do, or why we cling to the morality thing that we do, or why we would even strive to rise above the norm. You know what I mean? I just don't think they understand our devotion. And I did, then maybe they wouldn't think that we were being hypocritical when they see that we fall. You know, we're only human beings saved by grace, and we're trying very, very hard and struggling against the sin nature that we have too.
Yeah.
I don't know how to put it any better than that.
Yeah, we that's what we have. We're all sinners. Everybody is guilty. You can't earn God's grace.
No, you
nobody deserves it. You know, if it came down to a measuring contest, every one of us would be in the same pot.
Yeah.
We would all fall short.
Yep, we're all cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, nobody's. Somebody says, well, you know what? I never fell into that sin, or I never did that one, or hey, I must be better than you. Doesn't matter, pal. You're a sinner. One sin makes you worthy of death in God's eyes, because the standard is perfection. It's His character. Nobody can meet that. And that's why He made Christ available to us. It's because He knows we're not going to meet the standard. And so He took our sin upon Himself so that He can look at us as blameless and say, enter into paradise, my child. You know?
Yeah.
He's grace. He's good enough to do that for us. It's amazing love. What human being would endure that for the sins of the whole world? Nobody would do it.
Nobody would do that. You've really got to wonder, you know, you've really got to wonder, I mean, how somebody could create you know, if you were God, and you created a human being, and they just said, you know what, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and you know, I know that you created me with this free will, but I'm just going to do whatever I want to do. How would you feel if your son or your daughter did that to you? And then you consistently just watch them hurt what you've created all over the place. You would say, I've got to put an end to this. And he knew that before he ever did it. That's, you know, and that's amazing in and of itself. When you look at the Bible from beginning to end, he already knew. He's in eternity past and eternity future. He's watched this a million times. This conversation, he's already known. He's already seen it a million times go by him. He knew what I was going to say just then. He's seen it. He already knew it. You know, that's why he can say in his word, anything that you ask of me, you know, I already know what you need. But he wants a relationship with us. That's why he wants us to ask.
And the fact that he was willing to do what he did for us, to go to the cross for us and bear the lashes and the ridicule and the spitting and the rocks in the face and the cussing and the humility and the stabbed in the stomach and being mocked and finger pointing and hated and blasphemed and you know, hang on a cross with your bones coming out of joint until you die, is because it demonstrates to us that he loves us awfully dearly to do that, to be willing to do that for us. Hey, I'm going to kill the hangout. It's getting late, and I've got to get up very early in the morning, so I'm going to go. But I appreciate you guys joining. Marie, thanks for popping in. Pop in anytime when I have a hangout.
I'm really glad that I got a chance to ask you that question. It put my mind to rest.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks again. God bless you guys. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.